It's indeed a great honor and a pleasure to make a presentation and represent UNIDO, to speak or to share some experience and knowledge about food safety and compliance, quality compliance. And also to kind of have an economic perspective of food safety and the quality compliance, and to relate, to understand the global context and to relate to the local context, the Sri Lankan context, more specifically the cinnamon industry. So my presentation comprises two components: the global perspective of an overview and the global perspective of food safety and quality compliance, followed by a brief and an appreciative inquiry into cinnamon industry, Sri Lanka, the successes they enjoyed by the enterprises adapted food safety and compliance. First, I would like to introduce the organization I'm representing, UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And it's a UN organization specialized in industry development. In the global context, it has three priority areas or thematic areas, which are trade capacity building, poverty reduction through productive activities, energy and environment. UNIDO focuses geographically the least developed nations as well as developing nations, including the middle-income countries. Sector-wise, primarily UNIDO focuses on agro-based product, the industries, as well as light industries such as footwear, clothing, electronics, etc. UNIDO in industries give focus to SMEs as well as the small producers in focus of pro-poor development. The overall approach in global context, UNIDO uses compete, that means the competitiveness, understanding, identifying the competitive factors of industries, then working on capabilities of conforming to the trademarks or trade requirements, such as standards, and then connecting to the markets. So that means it's kind of integrating from product to market, the whole chain. UNIDO is no stranger to Sri Lanka. I mean, like so many years it has been here. And specifically on food safety and compliance, the most recent experiences are Indexpo, and which was a project to establish a non-profit organization to support on food safety and quality compliance certification, working with the local partners. The current one is UNIDO WTO Spice Council project. In terms, we call it a short term, we call it the Cinnamon project, which is still ongoing. It is to support across the cinnamon value chain to improve or enhance food safety and quality compliance, mainly focusing on competency-based training development under the National Vocational Qualification Framework, strengthening good manufacturing practices in the process, the producer level, and supporting the industry to obtain geographical indication to differentiate this unique value chain of cinnamon. Coming back to the topic of food safety in the global perspective, I mean, it has been becoming an increasing awareness due to various reasons, not started recently, but a few decades ago, primarily to globalization, the consumer demand, the transportation, the means of transportation development, communication, and so forth. In generally, the economic behavior is such that industrialized countries are the consumers mainly, or we can say the importers, and the developing nations are the suppliers of food, or the exporters. This is a very important reality to understand in the economic concept, the context of the global context. With the increase in transactions, a natural trend or natural phenomena is the increase in food or the health risk due to food safety issues. In technically, we call it SPS, sanitary, phytosanitary, standard-related issues. This means like the harming to human, plants, and animals in the territories of the countries which are importing foods and agro products. The history of food scarce is long. Some very famous ones are 1990s, the mad cow disease, and more recently, the pathological bacteria contamination in famous dairy supply chain. Then the horse meat scandal, then followed by the fox meat scandal mixing with the donkey meats, and also various times the alpha-toxin contamination issues. The cost is of food safety is sometimes you cannot cost it, especially when it's come to the consumer level, the public health. Because public health, the life cannot be actually valued in whatever the economic terms or financial terms. Due to unsafe use of the consumption of food, the chronic diseases such as cancer, different syndromes, and deformity of childbirth is a very significant cost to any country, any nation. So it's not just an individual or a kind of a family issue. It's actually a national issue for the countries who are actually consuming and importing foodstuff. In these territories, the companies which are importing foodstuffs are facing the liabilities, the lawsuits, and the consumer dissatisfaction and unpopularity, losing their stock prices. And this is also something really a concern to the companies based in the countries, the territories which are importing the foodstuffs from the exporting countries. Let me give some examples which are from official database research institutions. The figures it says all. I mean, in annually, according to the reported information, only in the United States only, $152 billion cost due to foodborne illnesses. That's means hospitalization, et cetera, et cetera. The cost to the trading nations, especially the economies, the exporting economies. The reduction of trade, barriers to trade, loss of goodwill, harming the competitiveness in the export trade, shrinking supply chain that is adversely affecting the end use, the primary producers. That is what actually in total reducing the contribution to the GDP, which is very important, especially developing countries. It's an economic activity. At the same time, when the businesses, the producers lose their footage, or I mean like their business, the employment also getting reduced. And this is not a good thing for a developing country, because employment is a very important economic parameter. And especially in developing countries, the producer level primarily comprise segments of vulnerable communities. It is in fact a cost to all, public, businesses, producers, that may include in the smallholders. Therefore, in the international trade, export trade, when it's come to the foodstuff and agro products, food safety, quality is a must. To distinguish between food safety and quality, the food safety is primarily any aspect of food injurious to the consumer, causing illnesses. And quality is the other aspects of foodstuff, which is odor, flavor, origin, etc. This is very important, especially when we are discussing policy level framework in related to food safety and quality. If you look at why people need food safety, why these institutions are talking about food safety, to have a sectoral approach, what motivates the different sectors, primarily the private and the public sector. Private sector comprise consumers as well. The motivation is there is a high demand, consumers are demanding food safety and assurance of food safety. And the consumers willing to pay a premium price for guaranteed goods. The goodwill of consumers, consumer trust, those are the kind of incentives or motivations for the private sector enterprises to adopt food safety measures. The most common adaptations are HACCP, Hazardous Analytical Critical Control Point, GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices, a prerequisite program of HACCP, CAP, Good Agricultural Practices, which are combining or integral part of the food safety chain. Then also the strict supply chain management, which can be vary from individual businesses. The public sector, it goes both ways. The exporting country, it's a public good. As in previous speakers spoke about cinnamon, it is not to individual company, it's actually to the whole nation. So one food scarce due to a irresponsible action of a company can cause a country and a damage to an economic transaction. And countries don't like to see any market failures, whether it's importing or exporting. The international framework, the importers, the countries, the territories of importing foodstuff, the governments and the firms adopt the importers' food safety standards at exporters. They consult the importers for the food safety parameters. But the phenomena is food safety across countries to country or country to country, borders to borders are complex. One country has different parameters or standards compared to the other. So this has entailed the harmonization of food standards, safety standards, primarily guided by the Codex Alimentarius Commission, which is actually an establishment or agreement set forth by FAO and WHO. And World Trade Organization, again the Codex is the legal referral, and the international standard, that is ISO, International Standard Organization, the relevant standard is ISO 22000. However, in the food safety compliance, there's a trade-off. The most popular ones are the trade dispute, especially in unharmonized trade or standards in the trade. And stringent regulations in some regions like EU could curtail exports to, especially developing countries. It's a significant cost to exports or the economy. At the same time, meeting stringent standards means additional logistics that incur additional cost, and that actually goes down or goes across the supply chain, finally affecting the commodity price. Another dilemma is how far the benefits of assuring food safety shared by the suppliers, the primary producers across the supply chain. These are the dilemmas or the trade-offs in food safety compliance. However, in 1995, when the WTO was established from GATT, they came to an agreement on SPS and TBT, sanitary and phytosanitary standards, as well as technical barriers of trade. This agreement is primarily to harmonize national standards with international standards to mitigate these kind of issues which I have mentioned earlier. And WTO evokes and adopts Codex as the referral and guidelines for implementing and setting forth or implementing the agreements, the stipulations in the international trade. The one critical aspect of WTO is, like, it permits individual importing countries to impose stringent standards which can go beyond international standards. However, given the fact that scientifically it has been justified and assured that it is not being used as an unethical prevention method for trade. To give a modern update, I have a privilege to share a recent interview between our project manager, Mr. Ali Badarne in Vienna, and BBC about the global dynamics or in the dynamics in the international food safety compliance. Sound. We can run through the beginning.
In countries is smooth, and that's what different regions are trying.
Okay, sorry for that technical.
Food scares have become increasingly common in the headlines these days. A little over a week ago, Walmart's China operations recalled donkey meat snacks that had been tainted with fox meat. And last year, millions of beef products containing horse meat were also found across Europe. And trying to tackle this is the Global Food Safety Partnership, made up of 70 countries and international organizations. It looks at how food is traded across borders. I spoke to Ali Bardaneh from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization.
How you implement the standard, how you test the product, how you deal with the borders and the customs, etc. So that, in a totality, is a barrier to trade, and countries will need to harmonize as much as they can to make sure that the flow of products between countries is smooth, and that's what different regions are trying to harmonize and trying to work together to overcome.
Take a look at places where we've had different food scares over the years. Of course, China being the chief culprit. There's a new committee being set up there. But then China also now having an increasingly protectionist stance in terms of letting food and the standards it's raised for food that's being imported into the country. So how is that acting as an impediment?
I think the case of China is really a very interesting case. But if we speak about food safety in specific, and we go for the last 5 years, China has been moving very quickly and fast, reacting on the different occasions. And we see now this really dynamics in reforming the food safety control systems in the country. It will take time until we see that the whole food safety control system in China is changed. But what we see that in the coming 5 or 10 years, we will see China is even more active at the global setting of standards. They will have an influence in how the whole global setup when it comes to food safety infrastructure is changing. So I think they're moving from reforming the internal food safety policies and standards and regulations, moving even later on at a global level to be more active in this field.
Ali Bardaneh, they're speaking earlier. Now,
with this slide, we conclude the global context. Let us focus on the national context, that is the cinnamon industry value chain, and appreciative inquiry to share some the successes, the experience of enterprises which adopted food safety and quality compliance. There have been several initiatives, and even in previous presentations, which have been briefly mentioned, to support the upgrading of infrastructure. Upgrading of infrastructure is extremely important in food safety compliance. And the enterprises which have adopted were successful in obtaining ISO 22000, HACCP, and GMP. The experiences they are having is primarily two obvious impact in their businesses. that is the competitive advantage and the reputation, which distinguish them from others, and especially because of these two aspects. And they fetch 50% more, or they're having a 50% more price advantage over their counterparts because of their compliance adaptations. The enhanced competitiveness and business growth arise mainly due to assured supply orders that gives them a stronger bargaining power and negotiating price in the local trade. And internally, they have a higher output and turnover due to motivated workforce, year-round production, given that with scientific application of agriculture practices, cultivation, and high output and input ratio. It may be intangible, but the enterprise, the management, they develop right knowledge because the compliances also entail certain specific practices to be adapted within the management. So that gives them an insight and correct knowledge, which gives them a good understanding about the market requirement. In cinnamon industry, one of the famous, very popular issue is high turnover and absenteeism in workforce. The reasons can be varied. However, the enterprises which adapted the food safety compliance and standards, they enjoy to see, or they are satisfied to see the worker satisfaction. Workers are satisfied and confident, and they have kind of developed a dignity. Due to what? Because they are getting better paid, and their incentives per output. The incentives per output also provided. Terms of payment and incentives are clear and well communicated to the workers because it's a part of the management system. The clear and tangible benefits to the workers, the uniforms especially giving a dignity, giving a formal recognition to their occupation. A structure, clear process of instructions and unity of command in the internal management also motivates a worker to work in a kind of a conducive environment. Another aspect is work is scheduled and daily routines are well communicated. So that gives a worker to plan and to have a personal life as well as a work life. The very low worker turnover and absenteeism is also due to better working conditions for workers. Cinnamon industry may be having, as a majority, the tediousness of the work and not very pleasant work environment. However, the companies, enterprises which adopted the compliance, they provide better working conditions which are attractive and safe and also favorable working environment. Worker sanitation and other essential social requirements are also being fulfilled because of it's a management requirement in the certification. Worker welfare and all these are giving a better outlook for the occupation and giving an opportunity or creating an opportunity to attract young people. The systems and processes streamlined and wastage being minimized. That gives a higher worker efficiency because of the correct and improved work methods, reduce work fatigue due to the improved management processes. And the physical environment of work also been improved to have a better ergonomics that also lead into higher work efficiency. Zero tolerance, contamination and hazards is a must in the compliance, so that is also assured in the system. The environment is conducive for skills training and worker performance improvement, especially when you're talking about ISO 22000. The way forward, these enterprises aspire is an ergonomics improvement of processing equipment and tool, which is the mechanization and work method adaptation needs to be further improved through a proper R&D system and also supporting producers who took initiative but unable to complete the upgrading process. That means through infrastructure and training, and also the producers who wants to change from the basic level of manufacturing method to more standard and a systemized way of processing. And this is a bibliography of which this paper is developed or prepared. And thank you so much.